Welcome back to your favorite show, Good Morning Kuwait. We're still running with this excitement segments that we have for today. And before we start, I know taxation could be a complex topic for a lot of people. But luckily, we have a special guest who's going to turn this complexity into a simple language. Please welcome with me, Mr. Zubair Patel is a partner tax and corporate service at KPMG in Kuwait and heads the tax steering group in KPMG, MESEC, Middle East, South Asia, Caucasus, and Central Asia region. He has nearly 30 years of experience working in Kuwait and the wider Middle East region, advising clients on tax compliance matters, and has worked closely with the Ministry of Finance in Kuwait. Can't wait to welcome him. Welcome, Mr. Zubair. How are you doing today?
All well. Good morning there, Mazouk. Really good to be here. And again, thank you for actually allowing me to come here.
Thank you. We have the pleasure, actually.
Great.
And before we dive deeper into the questions, I know taxation is complicated, kind of. How about we start kind of light? Could you please tell us about your daily routine as a head of tax at KPMG?
I think, again, we go into the office and just like everybody, like you, and I think as we deal with a lot of international clients, there are queries around, what is going to happen next. I think any challenges, particularly we have with their new contracts that they have signed, what are the tax implications? We then look at our people management, because we have a big team, so you have to manage, and you talk about what we're going to do on a day-to-day basis. Then we go to the ministry at times. There are meetings with the Ministry of Finance. At the end of the day, I think we look at, what we're going to do the next week and tomorrow. So yes. I think just quite a busy day, I think.
So managing numbers and managing people.
Yes, I think that's the game, I guess, in our field. But I think it's I think we're really lucky to do these
And mashallah, you're already excelling in it.
No, I think we're trying the best. Again, thank you.
So what kind of interests you in this field? How did it start with you?
I think it's a good question. I mean, obviously, I started my professional journey in London. So I went to study over there. Initially, I joined the audit profession, so again, number related. But in those days, I think the tax, particularly in Europe, was basically leaping forward. So there was a lot of opportunity. So I moved into tax, and one thing led to another. I really started loving it. I think it's an area where I feel, when we say for a career perspective, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit. I see a lot of youngsters, they talk about being an accountant, being into technology, but not a lot of people talk about coming into tax. But
that's very common.
It's a great field, actually, and it's a field that has technology as well as finance. So something I would, I know we're going to talk about today, I would encourage the youngsters in Kuwait to look at this field and to see that there is a big career opportunity in this area.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some people they don't maybe study taxation, maybe because it's not that common, especially in Arab countries.
Absolutely, but even in the developed countries, I've seen that it's only recently. Since I think 2020, I've seen people moving in that direction and university having specific courses. And even here, I think I've spoken to certain sort of training organization how to develop a syllabus which includes the tax content as well. So get the youngsters in. I think career is something, but also to develop knowledge about the subject. I think it's good to develop knowledge, particularly when you are a university student in this area.
And talking about knowledge, we also need to highlight the things that we maybe have some misconception about. And I think in terms of taxation, there are some misconceptions.
Absolutely, Mazouk. I think that's a great question, to be honest. A lot of people ask me, is there a personal tax in Kuwait? Is it on individuals? No, I think there's no personal tax. The whole focus has been for corporates. And
corporates.
Yeah, it is for major corporates, and that's been the foreign companies mostly. There is obviously zakat and national labor support tax for the listed companies as well as the closed companies. Now, I think what has changed, and I think that is where we were coming to, is about the BEPS. So what is BEPS? A lot of people ask me, what is BEPS? So BEPS is basically, it's a short form for base erosion profit shifting.
Okay.
And again, it's such a technical subject that what is that? So that has been a process that started from 2010. Globally, there was a push towards tax transformation and tax transparency as well as transformation. So this transparency raised questions that there were a lot of multinational companies. And when I mean multinational companies, those companies that are operating in more than one country, that they were shifting their profits to a country where there was a low base of tax.
Low base.
Yes, so basically the focus of this legislation, which has now come into Kuwait as well, which is
Okay.
called the DMTT regulation, is that everybody should pay the fair amount of tax.
Okay.
If you're using the facilities in the country, you're coming into the country, then you need to make sure that you pay the right amount of tax and don't avoid tax. So I think the misconception is that is it loading more taxes? I think the taxes are basically the reality of the world, but I think what it's trying to make sure is that everybody pays fair amount of tax.
So
Yeah,
how do
that's
you
the
find like
focus.
the significance of DMTT like in Kuwait?
Again, that's a great question. So the domestic minimum taxation, which is the 15% tax,
Okay.
it was introduced in Kuwait as well, which is in line with the OECD legislation. This is a global organization for economic cooperation and development.
Yes.
And this came through really to make sure that worldwide, the multinational companies do not use the jurisdictions to avoid any taxes. Kuwait is also signatory to it. Not only Kuwait, more than 140 countries have signed this to make sure that everybody is fair and transparent in their tax dealing. So what's going to happen is that companies here as well, foreign companies or even the Kuwaiti companies which are multinational and their revenue is over 750 million euros combined.
huge
That's
number.
a big companies,
Yes.
which in Kuwaiti dinar comes close to about 250 million Kuwaiti dinars on a consolidated basis. If that is the case, then they are subject to a tax, the minimum tax of 15%.
15%?
Yes, 15% of their profit.
Okay.
The profit they make, and this obviously the tax money is used by the government to build schools, libraries. This is how you build, all these infrastructure projects, improve your road, enhance your projects that you are doing. So the whole idea is that we move into a global sort of a tax sphere now in
That's
the region
gonna like
as well.
help
Yeah.
in developing the country itself.
Absolutely, and I think this is a way forward. And you should not be surprised if Marzouk, if you look at what's happened in UAE, you have VAT. In Saudi, you have VAT of 15%. So we see that the whole GCC is moving towards this
Taxation.
position. But definitely, I would say that Kuwait is taking the right steps in the right direction, and it's taking the step in a very controlled way. So which is really good. Yeah.
So what kind of like policies or maybe like some data that you are using to kind of like understanding that taxation?
That's great, and I think this is where I want to talk a little bit about technology because the data is such a challenge now. How are you going to gather so much data? You have got these multinational companies, big companies now,
Large numbers you're dealing with.
and absolutely they have data available, but here we are talking about data that is required in a specific manner, for this taxation.
Okay.
We call something data points. So there could be more than 100 data points required in terms of when you do the DMTT return. The good thing is the DMTT return is not due 15 months after the year end. The first return in Kuwait will be due in March 2027. But in this time, I would recommend the companies look at how are they going to collect the data. Do they need AI? Do they need generative AI technology? So
That's
there are
come to
now
my mind, like with AI right now, would it be very helpful to kind of conduct all this kind of data?
Absolutely, because what you want to do is you need the AI to basically generate what is going to be a potential tax liability. You need to know what is going to be your liability, number one. Secondly, how many data points you would need to report. Now to get, supposing get 100 data points done is not easy. It will take an army of people.
Definitely.
But with technology, at least you can get those analyses in order. You can assess what is actually required. And also, I think doing the return is one thing. After the return, once you file the return, you have made the declaration, a tax authority can ask, not only Kuwait, any tax authority can ask, okay, give me the details of how you come to this analysis.
And you have
So you
it.
need the technology to actually produce that very quickly. Because their expectation is that now they want the data not like in 4 to 5 weeks, they want the data in a
Immediately.
week's time, yes. So I think it should be available and you should be on a transformation journey. I think when you said most of the companies, you need to look at an organizational transformation.
That's really nice. And how do you see like the future transitioning of Kuwait into taxation?
I think the future is obviously this started with the DMTT. There are also discussion of corporate tax. But the key point I would say is to develop your people. So, when we talk about what is really required now with this change coming in, you need a good tax department within companies, which opens a big opportunity for Kuwaiti youngsters coming up, the young talented people, because this is a new area coming up for jobs. I mean, I'm seeing already companies now setting up tax department. Companies that never had a tax department
Right now.
and 2 or 3 people in tax. And that's because of 2 reasons. One is because of the DMTT regulations coming through. And secondly, the Kuwaiti companies which are also operating outside, the taxes are also increasing outside. So they need a central focal point to actually manage that. So I think you obviously need a strategy. You need a strategy how you're going to do that. If you don't strategize, the risk is you might end up with a big tax liability or delay penalties, which is a big cost to the company. Secondly, you need to develop your talent. Even if your current people have finance knowledge, you need to get them to do the technology knowledge experience.
So finance is not enough.
It's not going to be enough in the future. For finance individual, they need to know the technology now. And this is what I'm finding, when I go and speak to the multinational companies in developed countries or those jurisdictions where tax has been there for a long time, we are finding that 50% of the recruit are from finance, 50% are all from the technology side.
Okay.
So it's a very hybrid model that is developing. And to be honest, this is the need of the hour. And also, when I look at the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, which are going to be the next generation, I think even the people who are studying finance consider themselves a bit of a technological sort of expert as well, which is great. I think the way the whole the industry is moving through.
They have a readiness for it.
Absolutely. And I think, but the thing for the companies would be that they need to give specific trainings on the tax technology side. These are available, but definitely that is required. And lastly, we talk about tax, but I think what you really needed, tax need to be part of the decision-making process. And when I mean what is the decision-making process, you need the tax to be on the board of the company.
The board of the team.
Of the company. You're going to sign a big project. You're going to price something. You need to know what is going to be the tax liability.
Not like just a small department with like maybe 2 employees and that's it.
At the moment, but I think I'm seeing that because the impact is becoming bigger and bigger, companies are looking to invest both on the technology side, and I'm seeing investments on the people side.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah. And in terms of like, you mentioned we need like to kind of have awareness when it comes to companies. What about like the people in general, like the culture itself?
I think the way things are moving, say over 5 years, I think tax will become a reality. I mean, it is a reality in the rest of the world, but in this region as well, it will become reality. So it's good to have that knowledge. And we are in discussions when we speak to the educationists in the region or in this country. I think it should be part of some syllabus, particularly for accounting and students, or for students who are actually looking to specialize in management aspect to understand what tax is all about. Because it's, I mean, for example, when I was in the UK, tax was a part of a discussion on a day-to-day basis in any decision making, because it's a big number. The profit rates, the tax rate could be from 15% to 40%. So then that's a very huge impact on the decision making.
That needs awareness, definitely.
Absolutely need full awareness, and I think that is something that the universities here as well as the industry need to develop further.
Definitely. So how are like emerging technologies such as Generation AI transforming the tax compliance and reporting process?
Yes, I think as we spoke about just before, and I think I would just add to what we've just said, that other than the data collation, other than the fact that it frees the time of the professional. So rather than me doing all the calculation, Gen AI is doing the calculation. So the personnel themselves can focus more on strategic perspective. So it's allowing them to have a strategic perspective. Also, it's allowing that if any information is required by the Ministry of Finance, the Gen AI is available to analyze the data from the ERP, which is the organization's software, and generate the information required. So I think AI is the future. Obviously, we talk about it not only in tax but everywhere. But definitely in tax it will play a big part because of the data. Data is so key for tax, and AI is so connected with the data collection. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zubair. As you see, taxation is an important process that's going to help in developing the country. Mr. Zubair Patel have informed us and insightful information about taxation in a simple language, as I told you. Thank you so much. It was really great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Mazu. Thanks to everybody at KTV too. Thank you.